Let's make our own setup. It's easy to do. We're going to make a setup with two programs layered on the right side of the keyboard and another program on the left side. Go to Setup 99. That's the default setup. Now press Edit. When you first enter the setup editor, you'll be on the Channel Program page. Let's assign program number 14, which is Suitcase E-Piano, to the first zone. Notice it's assigned to Channel 1, and the destination is set to local and MIDI. The most important thing to remember about setups is that each zone must be on a separate channel, because you can only have one program on a channel at a time. The exception to this would be if you assigned one zone to local only and another zone to MIDI only. One other exception would be if you wanted the same program in more than one zone. For example, you could take a program and assign it to two zones, but then transpose one zone an octave up, allowing you to play the two octaves of the same sound. But more often than not, you'll want to have a separate channel for each zone. Now, we'll add another zone. Press the left More button 3 times till you see the new zone, and press it. Notice that the upper right-hand corner now shows that you're on zone 2 of 2. Notice also that the 2600 automatically picked channel 2 for this zone, since it assumes that you want to use a different channel. Let's assign program number 107, big strings, flange strings, to this zone. Now the two programs are layered. Remember that we said earlier, if the program name has two different names separated by the caret character, then moving slider A will switch between the two programs. But when I move the slider, the program stays in the big string sound. This is because now that you're in the setup mode, that slider is not assigned to the correct controller number. We'll change this later. But for now, let's adjust the relative volumes of each zone. Press the right More button 3 times. Then, press the Pan Volume button. On this page, we can set initial volume and pan settings. We'll set the volume of Zone 2 to 110. That will lower the strings a little bit. If you want to set the volume of Zone 1, press either Channel Bank button. Now, the display will show Zone 1 of 2. You can use the pan parameter to set a pan position for each layer. This sends controller number 10 on the MIDI channel of the zone. Notice that there is both an entry value and an exit value for each function. You'll find entry and exit values on all of the other pages involving physical controllers, except for the pitch wheel. This is an extremely useful feature. This allows you to send a specific value for that controller when you enter or leave the setup. For example, let's say that in this setup we want Zone 1 panned hard left. We choose a value of 0 for the entry value. Now we have set MIDI channel 1 to be panned hard left. If you were to go to a different setup, which includes channel 1, and it doesn't have an entry pan setting, it will still be panned hard left. But if we choose a value of 64 for the exit pan, then when we leave this setup, channel 1 will be back center panned. For now, we'll put the pan back in the center. Now let's create the third zone of our setup. Press the left More button until you get back to the New Zone button and press it. Next, press the right More button 3 times. And then press the Key Velocity Soft button. Since we're going to split Zone 3 from the other two zones, I'll set the high note to B2. Next, I will switch to Zone 1 and set it from C3 to C8. A good way to set the note range is to hold the Enter key underneath the numeric keypad, and while holding it, press the note that you'd like selected. So I'll press B2. Now I'll do the same thing for zone 2. Hold the Enter key, press the note. Now, press the Channel Program button. Scroll to zone 3 and select program number 32, Ricken Bass. Now, press the Key Velocity button. Notice the low velocity and high velocity parameters. These allow you to set a range of velocities in which to trigger a zone. By using these parameters, you can create setups which switch sounds according to the velocity, or add an additional sound when you reach a certain velocity. You also see the transpose parameter. For this setup, we're going to change the bass to play an octave higher. So scroll to zone 3, then highlight the transpose parameter and set it to 12 semitones. Finally, we'll set some of the physical controllers for our setup. Press the Write More button once, then press Foot Switch. Here we can assign the controller setting for the 4 switch pedals. The switch type allows you to set whether the pedal is momentary, which is the way a sustain pedal works, or toggle, in which case each time you press the pedal, it turns on or off and stays that way till you press the pedal again. If the switch type is set to momentary or toggle, then the destination can be any MIDI controller number. In addition, there are several special functions you can assign. For instance, you could start and stop a song, advance to the next setup, transpose the song a specific amount, or even mute a zone. You can also set the pedal to trigger a specific note. Note M is momentary and only triggers the note while you are holding the pedal, while note T is a toggle, so the note stays triggered until you press the pedal again. Notice that if the switch type is set to note, then the destination parameter changes from a MIDI controller value to a note number. The on and off parameters let you set the value of the controller number, which will be sent when you turn the pedal on and off. If the pedal is set to send a note, then these parameters are the attack and release velocities that are sent. Finally, you see that just like on the volume pan page, you can set entry and exit values. You will also find these same parameters on the switch page, which is used for the 2 buttons above the mod wheel and pitch wheel. Remember that each zone can have a separate value for each controller. In this case, I want to use the sustain pedal to only sustain the layered sounds, not the bass. So since the default setup already has sustain assigned to pedal 1, I'll scroll to zone 3 and set the destination to off. For the next step in creating our setup, we'll assign different sliders to control the volume for each zone. Press the slider button. This gives you access to the first 4 sliders. If you want to use the second 4 sliders, you'll find them under Slider 2 button. Take a look at the various parameters. Since all the continuous controllers work in a similar manner, you'll find these same parameters on the control pedal, ribbon, wheel, and pressure pages. Once again, the destination lets you choose any MIDI controller or a special function. I'm going to zone 1, and I'll set the slider B to volume. The scale parameter lets you control how sensitive the slider is to being moved. First, we'll solo this zone, zone 1, and set the scale parameter to 200%. With this, it would go from 0 to full value when you move from the bottom to only halfway up. Or, if it was set to 50%, then the slider would only get up to half of full value, even when the slider was moved all the way up. I'll leave this set to 100%. The add parameter allows you to add or subtract a specific amount to the normal values of the slider. For instance, if you set this to 45, then the lowest amount the slider would go would be 45. You could use this so that you could move the slider all the way down, but still have some volume for that zone. The curve parameter allows you to change the way that the slider responds as you move it. Check the diagrams in your manual to see how the different curves really work. Finally, we once again see the entry and exit values. Now that I have Zone 1 set, I'll go to Zone 2 and assign volume to slider C. You can simply press 7 and enter, a little shortcut to get to volume. Keep in mind that the initial volume levels I set on the volume pan page will still be set when I first call up the setup. But then I can use the sliders to adjust volumes for the zone in real time. Also remember that for each zone, you can assign any of the sliders. So if you want to have a single slider controlling the piano and string sounds together, you can easily do that by assigning volume to the same slider in those two zones. Now let's go back to Zone 2 and assign slider A to data. You can press 6 and enter. This is the default value for slider A when you're in program mode. Now, when you move that slider, it'll switch the string sound between big strings and flange strings. Finally, we'll choose our effects for the setup. Press the Write More button twice. Then, press the KD Effects button. The first parameter on the screen is the studio. A studio is a single object which consists of multiple effects and EQs, plus signal and output routing. We'll go into great detail on the studio later in the video, but for now, I want to show you an easy way to assign different effects from the preset studios. Select Studio number 3. Take a look at the name. The 2600 has 4 separate effects buses, plus a global auxiliary effect. For all of the preset studios in the instrument, we have named them so that you can tell what the various effects are in the studio. In this studio, there's a room reverb on effects bus 1, a chorus on effects bus 2, and a chorus delay reverb multi-effect on effects bus 3. On effects bus 4, we have no effect assigned to it, which is indicated by the space between CDR and Hall. In our preset studios, we typically leave effects bus 4 set to no effect so that you always have one dry bus to choose from if you need it. Finally, a Hall reverb is assigned as the auxiliary effect. Now, press the left More button 3 times and press the Channel Program Soft button. Move the cursor to highlight the Out parameter. Currently, it says Prog, which stands for Program. This means that the output setting for each layer in a program is used. But you can override those settings from the setup, which means you can easily choose the effects for the individual programs in your setup without having to go back and edit the programs. Let's set Zone 1 to KDFX B. This will give it some chorus on the piano. Zone 2 we'll set to KDFX C, and that will add the chorus delay reverb to the strings. And Zone 3 to KDFX A. This will assign the room reverb to the bass. Now we're ready to save our setup. Press the left More button 4 times. Then press Name. You see the name of the original program, Default Setup. Let's name our setup E Piano Trio. There are 2 ways you can name things in the 2600. The first way is to use the numeric keypad. Each number has letters printed in green under the button. Each time you press the button, it cycles through those letters. Use the plus/minus button to change from upper to lower case. The left and right arrow buttons, along with the 2 arrow soft buttons, are used to move the cursors across the screen. You can use the delete button to erase characters, and insert will insert a space. The second way to name is to use your keyboard. Notice that in the upper right-hand corner it says Keyboard Naming, and that it's turned to off. To turn it on, press the Channel Bank Up button. Now the different keys on the keyboard are assigned to different characters. If you look on your manual in Chapter 5, in the section of Saving, you'll find a chart that shows which key is assigned to which character. Pressing the Channel Bank Up button again puts keyboard naming in advanced mode. This is described in detail in the manual. Once you get used to keyboard naming, you may find you can name items much quicker this way. So, I'll finish naming this setup by pressing the correct keys. We'll call it Trio. Once you have named the setup, press OK. Now press Save. The 2600 will choose the first blank number to save into. You can actually choose any number you want to save in. If a program already exists in the number you choose, the display changes to show the program in that location and asks if you want to replace it. For now, let's just save it to a blank location. You can press the plus and minus keys together under the wheel to get to the first available location, and then you can rotate back to replace by hitting them again. So let's save it to the first available, and I'll hit Save. Now I'll exit out, and it's saved. Congratulations, you've just created your first setup. We'll take a look at one more setup. Press the MIDI mode button. If the top line of the display does not say Transmit, press the Transmit Soft button. The first parameter on this page is called the Control Setup. We've already seen that you use the Setup Editor to allow you to set the various controllers to send specific messages. But what about when you're playing in program mode? The Control Setup parameter allows you to choose a setup which will determine the behavior of all the physical controllers while you're playing programs. For example, let's say you want to use a continuous controller pedal for volume control. Highlight the Control Setup parameter and press Edit. Now, press the right More button once. Then press the C pedal Soft button. Now assign volume to the C pedal 1 destination. And you can do that by pressing 7 on the numerical keypad and pressing Enter. Now press Exit. At this point, the 2600 takes me to the Save screen. I can rename the setup if I want, but for now, I'll just press Yes, and then Save. Now, I'm returned to the Control Setup parameter, and the Kurzweil has automatically selected my new setup for the control setup. Now, as long as I'm playing programs, I can use my pedal for controlling volume. Unless you make your own control setup, you'll normally want to leave this parameter set to number 97, which has a setup with all the default assignments for the sliders and other controllers. If you're in program mode and your sliders or pedals or any other controllers don't seem to work correctly, check this parameter and make sure it's set to number 97, or one that you've created. If you do make your own control setup, you should remember that the preset programs have been programmed so that they respond to the specific controller numbers assigned to the sliders and other controllers in setup number 97. So, if you change those assignments, you won't have the real-time control over those things we've programmed.